Merci beaucoup. Madame, Messieurs, bonjour. Unfortunately, I will speak in English. I hope that it wouldn't be too fast. Maybe at the next time I would visit this wonderful place, my French would be better enough to speak in French. So let's start. The strategy of defending American hegemony started from pivot to Asia in 2011. Is currently facing challenge from its adversaries in Northern Asia, Russian invasion of Ukraine, China's military build-up on the Taiwan Strait, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea ongoing testing of advanced missiles. Confusion and cause and the effect represents the Rand researcher's take. Let me quote. Typical of the alliance and partnerships in which the United States participates focus on defensive objectivities. That is not the case for this emerging trilateral partnership. Russians, Putin seeks to conquer Ukraine and make it a part of restored Russian Empire. China's President Xi Jinping seeks regional, if not global, dominance by 2049. North Korea's Kim seeks Korean unification under North Korean control. In short, these three countries have imperialistic goals. This the end of this quoting of very important, influential Rand Corporation's analysis. But in fact, we should take into account the ongoing development of Chinese-Russian alliance for a new era against the dominance of collective West, which the North Korea could be important part in East Asian sphere of struggle. North Korea gains after the Russian intervention in February 2022, both in the geopolitical and military aspects, especially that Russia became very similar state under the strong sanctions regime from the West, about 15,000 of sanctions. North Korea supported Moscow by sending ammunition, but also in the sphere of informational struggle, with the presence of the information about possible participation of fighters from North Korea against the Ukraine, which finally was untrue. These facts highlight how this communistic state start to be very important in the geostrategy of Chinese-Russian alliance for new era. Now let's try to reconstruct the way of building the relationships of the two Eurasian powers, which is described in the official narrative as a comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new epoch or new era. Meanwhile, it is essential to establish what both countries call the new epoch, not new world order. It's worth to remember the new epoch, not new world order. Since coming to power in 2013, Xi Jinping has met Vladimir Putin more 40 times, more than any other foreign leader. Strategic partnership confirmed by the joint declaration on a multipolar world was established in 1997. In 2001, Russia and China signed a treaty of good neighborliness, friendship and cooperation. In this treaty, Putin and Jiang Zemin committed their joint effort to promote a just and fair new world order adhering to the rule of friends forever, enemies never. They highlight such a growing contradiction between Russia and the United States at the time and Vladimir Putin's speech in Munich in 2007, in which he criticized unilateralism were found to be breeding ground for cooperation. There, in 2011, the bilateral relationship was transformed into a comprehensive strategic partnership for coordination based on equality, mutual trust, mutual support, shared prosperity and friendship. Russia and China have undertaken ambitious projects to integrate the Eurasian markets. The first step was signing the Treaty on the Eurasian Economic Union as a step towards building the Eurasian Union. China in turn promoted the Belt and Road Initiative. The two initiatives differed for the greater extent and even clashed in many ways in those times. The possibility to start a new big game, this time between Russia and China in Central Asia, was considered. And that brings us to the new epoch that started in practice with the Chinese announcements of the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, but also with the revolution or situation in Kiev in 2014, which started, in fact, the ongoing Ukrainian crisis. Ukraine crisis has shifted geopolitical axis of Russia. It has directly weakened Russia, and China began to realize that if Russia would overthrow, the West will control all their natural resources possible. And most important, it may have turned out that under pressure and sanctions, Moscow would change its geopolitical vector to anti-Chinese. Therefore, Beijing supports Russia by signing long-term contracts for the purchase of gas and oil. In these new geopolitical conditions, both powers signed a declaration on opening a new stage of strategic partnership at Shanghai Summit held in 2015. Its principle was the pursuit of symbiosis between the Russian project of Eurasian integration and Belt and Road Initiative. The new stage of relation was crowned with the idea of Greater Eurasia, or Greater Eurasian Partnership, initiated by President Vladimir Putin in 2016. In those times, in the narration, highlight the possibility to develop great area and stability through the vast region from Lisbon to Jakarta. Something new in the history of this kind of concept. But in the People's Republic of China white papers published in January 2017, nothing indicated that China was aspiring to build alliance with Russia. Among the priorities, relations with the US were on the first place in those times. Moreover, the joint statement on developing the two countries' comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction in new epochs adopted during Xi Jinping's 2019 visit to Russia explicitly says the bilateral relationship will be based on a repudiation of establishing allied relations and of confrontation and on not being direct against third parties, among other principles. And the advent of new epoch brings a new quality moment, the start of United States trade war against China in 2018. The former US President Trump saw Beijing as the main threat to American hegemony, weakening the existing anti-Russian geopolitical vector. He also rejected the missionary vision of the United States as a promoter of democracy and human rights in favor of superpower competition of spheres of influence. However, after Trump's presidency had ended, the President Biden returned to the previous course and indicated the US should remain a world leader promoting democracy around the globe. And by the way, it is worth to highlight that John Mearsheimer a few weeks ago highlighted that new multipolar world order began in 2017, and it includes three center of powers. Next to still most strong United States are the China, People's Republic of China, and Russia. So 2017, it is a very important moment of change in international world order. The consideration of American terrorists and practitioners proved that Russia and China create something more than a strategic partnership. Such conclusions are suggested by the report of American intelligence community in 2019. Some have suggested that President Donald Trump's benign view of Russia in reality is a carefully thought out cover for strategy designed to split it from China and thus shift the geopolitical balance in Eurasia in favor of the United States. A former ambassador to Russia, Michael Mayfall, pointed out the important task for American geostrategy should be to separate China from Russia. All that generates long-run disagreements and persistent opinion fluctuations among practitioners. Jim Mattis, a former U.S. Secretary of Defense, said in June 2018 that there is a little in the long term that aligns Russia and China, but the head of U.S. National Intelligence, Daniel Coates, told legislators in 2019 that Russia and China are more aligned than at any point since the mid-50s. And in their narration, they are still present the thesis that is most advanced and best relations in all of history of both Eurasian powers. While the 2013, one must agree that Russia abandoned its attempts to balance China and chose to join its development in order to remain in the game of world powers. Moscow recognized that the West as the greatest threat to the Russian sovereignty. But the US initiation of trade war and process of weakening China changed the situation because rapprochement with Russia also became a strategic necessity for Beijing. This is how conditions of the new epoch in relations between the two Eurasian powers have been shaped, and from 2000, especially from 2022, these close relations start to be even visible for more dogmatic intellectuals in the West, including Poland. As it seems, it is a new world order that is emerging after the end of unipolar hegemony of the United States and domination of the West. It can be assumed that it started in practice with the Chinese announcement of Belt and Road Initiative and in the starting of Kiev changes in 2014 and development of tensions with Russia and still ongoing process. And now let's jump to the second aspect, the North Korea part of this strategy of alliance for new epoch. China and Russia are always seeking ways to reduce US military influence in Northern Asia. It is crucial to analyze the factors that are driving China, North Korea and Russia to come together. The Japan, South Korea, United States trilateral may seem like the trigger motivating closest relations between these three states. However, this is not the only reason. The growing relationship between the three countries is rooted in accumulation of events that have raised security concerns in respective capitals and acted as a trigger simultaneously. Of course, the final nail can centrally be said to have been the Japan-South Korea-United States trilateral partnership announced at Camp David. So the first reason that motivated a renewed relationship between China, North Korea and Russia can be traced back to when the Indo-Pacific concept was introduced. Beijing and Moscow were furious and suspicious of the concept, which they saw as a new Cold War containment strategy aimed at containing China. North Korea also sided with Beijing and Moscow in their opposition. The second reason of building closer relations was the normalization of relations between Seoul and Tokyo in 2022 under the influence of Washington, which was preparation, I think, to joint defense exercise between the United States and its two Northeast Asia allies as a new platform that could be used against Beijing in the future. However, officially countering the North Korean threat. Narration about building relations between Japan and South Korea with NATO also revealing that this is yet another installment of the rivalry against the emergence of multipolar world. In addition, as enunciated in its National Security Strategy and Defense White Paper, Japan's rising military power gave an explicit signal changing dynamics in Northern Asia geopolitics. By this time, it was clear in Beijing and that the US, with its allies, had already formed a broad consensus on the perceived threat emanating from the China-North Korea-Russia axis. The third and final movement was the Japan-South Korea-US trilateral summit in August 2023 at Camp David, which effect was some kind of institutionalization of this trilateral. After this summit, Beijing reportedly reached out that Pyongyang de facto taking the lead on heightening the axis. North Korea also wants to increase its security by bandwagoning with Beijing and Moscow in this new partnership, in this new situation, geopolitical and geostrategic situation. But of course, it's obvious that qualitative moment of geostrategical change was Russia's intervention against Ukraine in February 2022, which began the process of clarifying the opposition between the collective West and counter-hegemonic New Era bloc. Before the start of the special military operation in Ukraine, Russia tried to pursue a balanced policy toward the Korean peninsula states. Moscow provided the moderate political support to North Korea as a good friend and neighbor without encouraging its nuclear ambitions. Economically, although Russia was considered North Korea's second largest trading partner after China, its trade turnover with Pyongyang was 1/50 of Beijing's. Attempts to step up economic cooperation after the debt problem was settled in 2014 did not produce significant results as the sanction pressure on North Korea continued to increase. Until the May of 2022, Moscow could argue with Washington over the severity of sanctions for a new nuclear test or missile launch, but there was no doubt that Pyongyang's advantage in the development of its nuclear missile potential would trigger more sanctions. Generally, Russia supported international sanctions against North Korea because the position of the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council was more important than good relations with Pyongyang in those times. In particular, Russia was even forced to close its borders to North Korean workers who were an important labor resource for its far eastern regions. The first sign of real change in Russia's policy came when on May 2022 it vetoed new United States sanctions resolutions in the United Security Council. After that, Moscow, acting jointly with Beijing, has been curbing American attempts to impose new sanctions. Strengthening the role of North Korea, new moment, which close us to this trilateral new partnership as a part of geostrategy of Moscow and Beijing toward new epoch, was symbolized by the presence of Politburo member Li Hongzhong of the People's Republic of China, and above all the presence of Russian Defense Minister Shoigu at the celebration one of North Korea's key national holidays in July 2003, referring to the end of hostilities in the Korean War. And of course, the symbolism was that both three nations was struggle against the South Korea supported by United States. And then came the visit of Russian and meeting between Russian President and Kim Jong-un, and there would be another effects of this, but I must go to the conclusion. Unfortunately, but the conclusion is very clear. The strategies of NATO's eastern flank is as evident here as the building of an Asian NATO. The remnant strategy of containing the expansion of the continental heartland powers describes well the geostrategic dimension of this United States activity. The inclusion of North Korea into a greater Eurasian partnership as a tool of counter-hegemonic bloc for new era is now very clear. It plays an analogical role as development close relations with Iran, both by Beijing and Moscow, which supported his membership in BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Of course, it gives Western narrative chance to spreading the thesis of the rise of a new autocratic axis in the line with the new US concept. But if we look at the matter from the side of constructions of multipolar world order, then North Korea's rapprochement with the two Eurasian powers is simply an evolution of their previous relations, due to the military component of the rivalry between the collective West and new era axis based on the Beijing-Moscow alliance in Ukraine. It is developed to the more advanced level of interaction. North Korea thus gains political support for Kim Jong-un, which allows it to emerge from marginalization and isolation. And secondly, to legitimize the narrative of North Korea struggle against US imperialism, which becoming more and more increasingly common with the rhetoric of Moscow and Beijing. Thank you for your attention.